Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to our tree workshop. This is something we put together with the Tree Subcommittee and the Division of Forest and Lands. Tonight we have Liz and AJ that are giving the sort of the workshop on how to plant bare root and containerized trees. The goal is to get more trees planted in the city of Concord. We're losing about 30% of our canopy based on recent inventories, and there's not a lot of room for the city to plant trees in our right-of-way. So we need our residents to help out and plant within their properties. So the most affordable and easy way to do that is either bare root plants or containerized trees. They're easy, you can carry them, you can get them at the nursery, they're relatively inexpensive, and they're easy to take care of. So as part of tonight, we have trees donated, containerized trees that are about 5 or 6 feet in height that were donated by Unitil. And Liz is coming in. This is a maple tree. So we're going to plant one of them here at the community center so we can have shade out back for the kids in the playground. And we have some other trees that Liz will go through just to explain what those trees are. And then through the Merrimack County Conservation District, we have bare root trees donated. These are even easier and cheaper to get. So I don't know what species we have, but we will be giving some away tonight. And then on the farmer's market on Saturday, we're going to give the rest away to people that stop by the Merrimack County Conservation District table where the tree subcommittee will be. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Liz, who will talk through the trees, and then we'll move outside and plant some trees.
Hi. So we have 3 species that are going to be the containerized trees that are available for a raffle that we'll give away. One is the serviceberry. This is a really pretty small-sized tree. It has white flowers. We'll have these purple edible berries if you can get to them first before the birds. And it does pretty well in most environments. Likes partial sun to partial shade, moist, well-drained soils. And then the sugar maple, which I brought up here, is one of the other trees that we'll get. This will grow into a large-sized tree, so it's great to have space for this tree. It'll be a beautiful shade tree, and it has great fall colors. And then our final tree that we have available for giveaway is a sweet bay magnolia. This is a beautiful tree. It's kind of semi-evergreen. It will hang onto its leaves into the winter a little bit, and they'll finally fall off. Beautiful creamy white flowers. Silvery kind of greenish foliage, silvery underneath. But really important to avoid planting this in like wind-thrown areas. It can get, kind of, if it's exposed to the wind in the winter, it might have some dieback. So those are the 3 trees that we have available. I think from here, we're gonna go outside and AJ is gonna do a demonstration of how to properly plant bare root and containerized trees.
All right. Cool. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we move outside? Good. Welcome. Hi. Okay. And yeah, I think these are good examples of native trees that we're trying to build up the native species that are in the city. So these are good examples that people can buy on their own. They're readily available at local nurseries. So that's why we wanted to highlight these as accessible trees that people can plant in their yards. Great. Oh, yeah.
Can you find bare root trees or saplings at most of the nurseries we would look for trees at?
Yeah, saplings you can, but the containerized saplings you can find, but the bare root trees, no. So every spring, and I don't know, fall as well, the Conservation District does their plant sale, and bare root trees are part of that plant sale, so you can look that up. And the state nursery has a website that you can order bare root trees from them. And I think there's other nurseries online that you can order. The Arbor Day Foundation you can order online and get bare root trees. But they're small little whips. They're a little intimidating when you first get them because you can't imagine they're going to grow into anything, but they do. Just give them a little bit of time and they'll within a year, you'll start to see some growth. The first year is a little bit slow, but once you get through that, it's a cheap way to get shrubs and trees on your property. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. We'll move outside.
So if we're ready to get going, so as Beth had mentioned inside, little bare root seedlings. Great, easy way to put some trees in your yard, but they're little. And these roots are really susceptible to drying out. In the bag is a little bit of sawdust, a little bit of water. The timing on bare roots is really critical. These are actually harvested, stored in a cooler. The buds haven't come out yet, so they just came out of the cooler. Some storage could, usually low temp cooler, sort of a refrigerator situation, but they're going to want to break bud real fast. I mean, springtime's already here. So bare root seedlings just sort of have a, sort of a limited time frame window in the springtime as well to, get them from the nursery, get them wherever they're coming, be home that weekend and, and get them in the ground that night if you can, or definitely within the next few days. If you can't get them where you want them, where somebody marked the X on the ground here for us, heel them into the edge of the garden, put them into the edge of the vegetable garden or something like that, but get them in the ground so those roots aren't drying out. The wind that we've got right now is really, really tough on little seedlings and little nursery stock like this because it's really dry springtime weather and that warm wind, although we like it, keep the bedroom windows open at night and that kind of stuff, is really tough on these little roots. And the roots just can't dry out. So have a tarp, have a wet rag, just keep them in here, keep them in a bucket of sort of muddy water or whatever else, take them out, plant them in the holes, and move on. With this, you're going to want to dig a hole that's several inches sort of, deep. So these little guys right here, the hole's going to be about this deep, but I want to dig the hole almost as big around as that pot and loosen the soil up because these roots are really fragile. So spend a few minutes, dig it out, and then you're going to lay the roots out in the hole because they're going to come wrapped up, kind of like this in their package, especially if they shipped them to you in the mail or whatever else. Sometimes they're going to come in a little form and they're known as plugs. So it's just going to look like a popsicle. So take the popsicle apart, open the roots up, and give them the best fighting chance. And when you're going to put this back down in the soil, just make a mud pie. Make a real thick cake batter, whatever, brownies, whatever you like to eat, whatever. But water in the soil really hard, flood it with water, make a lot of mud, and that will help settle the soil in around all these roots. Years ago, you take a shovel, make a little hole in the ground, stomp it in, and go on to the next one. And if you've got 500 Christmas trees to plant, you're probably doing that. If you got 5 of these to plant, take the 5 minutes. Give them a little extra love and spread those out. And just being outside just this long is already starting to dry these roots up. So we'll get them back in the bag, tuck them back into that sawdust. So if folks are taking these home, down in the basement, if you can't plant them for a couple of days, get them out of the way, stick them right in the vegetable drawer in the fridge is fine with these because, they haven't broken bud yet. They haven't been out of storage that long. So the next part of this mix is getting some trees, a little bit larger size stock. Containerized plants like this are great. Again, pick it up, throw it in the back of the car, minivan, whatever else. If you need to go to the nursery and get these, just slide it in a garbage bag. You can tie a garbage bag right around the base of it. Keeps all the sort of mess inside of it. But come up close and let's look at it. So this tree most likely started, definitely started as a little seed along the way. Most likely started as a nursery stock like that seedling size. And they put it in a container. And then a few years down the road, they put it in another container. So this is anywhere from, 5 to 6 or so years old, depending where it is. It's really tough to tell the tree of an age because obviously you got to cut the tree down and then we'd lose the whole thing. But in the nursery, they're keeping that stock. So this is, 5 or so years old. This pot is just about the size max for this. So if the nursery had kept this over, they'd want to take it out of this pot and put it into that much bigger pot. About 1 inch in diameter of the stem of this plant right here. We measure them in caliper, but thumb size, broomstick size. You want the pot to be about a foot or so in diameter. We may have some girdled roots in here. Everybody's made a pot of sticky spaghetti at one time or another, so it all sort of mashes together and sticks. Just spend a few minutes and pull those roots back apart. Young trees like this have a great survival rate because they're really small. They don't need a lot of care. They don't need a lot of water. They just need a little bit of sun, a little bit of water once in a while. The bigger the tree is, that tree was a ball and burlap specimen that we put in over there, and probably some of those maples and basswoods over there were as well. So they're coming with a ball of soil sort of packed down around them, but it's a much bigger tree, needs a lot more water. They go through a tremendous amount of water in the nursery. Those are plugged into a water spigot all the time. This tree right here, I'd like, depending on the soil that we're getting into, I'd like to see this thing get watered, at least once a week for the first year. For the first 2 years would be great. It probably is pretty sandy soil, a lot of pines behind us. You can help address that by adding some soil amendments to the ground. We're not doing any of that tonight, I do a lot of sort of tough love planting, so the tree's got to adapt. So this has some compost and some mix in it, and we're going to sort of mix that in with the soil that's in here. And if we need to, we can always address this with some compost, and at some point there'll be bark mulch on top of here. Bark mulch does a lot of good for the little tree like this. It adds in a little bit of protection from the lawnmowers and the weed whackers, and helps to hold into that soil and give it just stretches out the moisture. So planting by committee is always tough. Why this tree? Why this species? Why here? All those kind of things. It's a sugar maple. It wants to be big. 60, 70, 80 feet tall if it wants to. So do we got the height? Sure, look up. No problem. I want to keep it away from walkways. Well, why? This tree doesn't like salt. So not a tree for the roadside. So if you're taking one of these home and you're putting it at your house, get it back off the curb. The right of way of the street and that kind of stuff, they've got those little green strips. They end up with a tremendous amount of salt and snow and everything else on them. Sugar maples don't want to be in that area. It does want to be in a well drained site. Probably not as well drained as some of the sand that we have because they still want some moisture. So we're just going to give it some moisture along the way and talk to it and help these trees out. This tree, again, relatively small. We're going to dig a hole twice as wide, but just about that depth. So I open up the root flare. You've got some roots coming right out of there. So the hole's not going to be quite as deep as that pot. I want a firm bottom to the bottom of that hole. We can tell how the wind is getting, but I want to open the soil up around it. We're going to mix everything back in there. And we're actually going to cheat a little bit on this one and plant this tree in a little bit of a dish because we're going to collect any moisture that's coming down towards us. You can just stand there and hold that tree all night. So we're going to plant this one in a little bit of a dish. So we'll make a little bit of a berm or a moat on the back side of it. So if we find any rocks or whatever, we'll put that in there. And I'm not going to mulch this for at least a day or two. I want to water it in heavy and get all that soil to pack down around the roots because we're not jumping up and down and packing on these roots. We're just kind of making a cake batter, a mud mess or whatever else with this. So right tree, right, all that kind of stuff for the right spot. Got plenty of room for it. Sugar maples are great trees, best fall foliage we've got around here. Maybe not ideal soil, but we can work on that and try to amend that. Any other questions before we sort of open this up?
Dig safe?
What's that?
Dig safe?
Dig safe has already been here. So we've got flags all over the place. So the utilities have been marked out. They marked the big, dig safe is always called, 3 or 4 days ahead of time. They've got to be out 72 hours. So you mark it off with white. So that's why we got the big white X here. And everybody else started marking off all the utilities. So each one of the utilities has certain colors associated with it. So there's no water and no gas and something's over in that area. So we're clear on all those kind of things. And you'd be surprised what's running through your property. You never know where utilities guys everything got run through. So we ready to start digging? So everybody's got stuff in your hands. You got to put your stuff down someplace. So to get this out of here, there's a bunch of ways you can do it. You can take an old pair of rusty pruners that you don't use for anything anymore. Get a pair of utility shears. You can use a knife to cut this pot off, but we're just going to whack it. And as long as it's not really root bound, I want to lift this right out of here. And when you're selecting these, I don't want to get one that has roots, sneaking out of the pot all over the place because that means it's been in the pot, just a year or so too long. So this one's not too bad. Oh yeah, it's going to come right out. So I need a hole right here. Grab a few shovels out to about the edge of the X because twice as big as the tree is that we've got. But you're only going down about 6 to 8 inches. And
Just your side.
yeah, just about to the white X.
You start, I'll follow you. You're gonna break the ground. All right.
It could be some tough digging. And then just pile everything right on the blue lettering over there.
Ready? Come on over. Go ahead, Tom. Tom is your name? Jeez, I have a
Way to go,
problem with
Tom.
that name. Hey, you put your feet right on there. Exactly.
Think heavy thoughts.
There you go. You got it. Right over there.
Excellent. It's a little crunchy. It's a little crunchy. It must be. Maybe it's Phil.
One thing that we want to do is make sure we sort of break up those edges a little bit because we don't want to leave a hard edge. So now we're going to do a little measuring. Lay the rope right across. Can you bring your shovel right over here and point it right down the ground? Just straight down. So you're just about to that lip. Take your shovel out. So we got plenty of depth. And some of this soil is going to fall off this root ball. Don't feel bad if it does. I'm okay with some of the soil coming off because we want to mix this in. You don't want to have all the nutrients and all the compost that's in here keep the roots in this area. We want to sort of break that up. So we're just going to tip this in here. You can take that rock right out if you want. Take that rock right out, put it right over there.
Some city employees too.
If it's tough and it doesn't want to come out of there, that's when you can end up taking a knife and just making a slit in the bottom of this and just slitting up the side. And just, take the container off. Sometimes we try to reuse some of the containers. So now, here's one of the toughest decisions. Which way does it face? It's got to be just right. I'm best making the decision. I can see the hands going. Which way we turn it? Clockwise or counterclockwise?
This way.
Based on my clock.
Yeah, there.
Counterclock.
That's about good. I feel like.
Looks good.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Now, are we basically straight up and down? Okay. Which way is it got to go?
Towards you.
Okay. So we pack a little soil on this side, more towards me or no?
No.
Towards me.
That's
Stand right over there. Stand nice and square to this and step back about 2 big steps. Do you think that's nice and straight?
I think you should. I think this is better for you.
That's a better view on that side. You want me to turn it this way?
Well,
Some people are shaking their heads. Some people are saying yes.
I'm saying like that's not like. I think it should be turned the other way.
The other way around?
Yeah, that's good.
Right there? Okay. What's that?
We'll get it right.
We can keep moving around. So you need to come down in here and mix this soil in with your hands. Take the weeds out, take the rocks out. Now can we get some water?
Well, I need to.
So you didn't need to.
I don't know, I just need a perspective, yeah. Back to me? That's okay. Now's an easy time to do it.
You didn't need to loosen any of the roots. A little bit less. It's kind of just on its own.
Yeah, we're just kind of doing this as we mix in the soil. So this is that tangled pot of dried up spaghetti. And you can see most of the roots on here are in the top 2 or 3 inches in this pot. So we're just going to open them up.
Wash it off. Free the roots.
Yep.
Hey, you dunk it in the water.
The cameraman is saying that it's got to lean in. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's great. It's a nice rock.
Gotta go to the right.
Oh, yeah.
This depends where the person's standing, which way we're going. That's better?
Kind of like you after running around.
Making his mud pie.
So take everything. We're going to end up staking this one down.
How's that?
I'll hold it.
Got it?
Right.
Great, perfect. Just
Gotta
like
hold
that.
it straight. Yeah, just like that. Don't pull on it. Just keep it straight.
How come nobody else is making a mud pie? Beth, come on. Beth, come on in.
Mud pie.
Beth, come on in.
Or you're getting money.
Let me borrow your phone.
You're gonna take the flyers. What am I doing?
Making some mud.
Better.
Cake batter, brownie batter, whatever you want to make.
Should have worn different pants.
Goes well with those white pants.
Right?
So we're on a little bit of a slope, not high. So this tree is about balanced with, even with here, it's a little high for the low spot and a little low for the high spot. So when it's not a real steep slope, but you just find a balance in between.
it a little bit. There it is.
Whoa,
Just like that. Just like
that's
that.
way too not straight.
Watch. We'll go over and look at it from the other side. Let's go for a second. Go look.
You got to step back.
You got to step on the side and look. Yeah.
Now when you
Straight up and down.
If that doesn't work,
I wanted to make it
It's tight when you're that close up to it. It's hard to see what you're getting into. So we talked about making a little bit of a moat or a little bit of a berm around the bottom side of it, because we're going to get some water. You know, every time it rains, it's going to come down.
This makes mud.
Yeah.
We want to make mud. Yeah. So there's a natural root flare on the bottom of the tree. So if you look around in any of the trees that Mother Nature put in, there's a little bit of a bell or a little bit of a flare. And you want that flare where this root is. This is sort of a false root coming out of here. But if you look down in here, there's more roots right down at this area right in here. So, and when you're planting on a slope, you get a balance. So if you drew an imaginary line from here to there, we'd be about level. Here to there, we're a little high. And when trees are growing on a slope, you know, you're just going to get that balance. But if you look at over those big pines, that tree was planted, you know, by a squirrel. Mother Nature put that in, whatever. And it's got that flare right there. And that's where those roots are going to spread out and really give that anchor to the tree when it gets some wind. We're probably going to end up staking this one just because it's a tough spot for the wind and that kind of stuff. But we'll stake it, get some compost to it, a little bit of mulch in a few days. After we water this in, we want to flood this right in with water again. Because by doing this, it's going to slowly take some of this soil down with it and fill in all these little holes. It takes an extra few minutes to do this to a tree, but you're going to increase that survivability because you don't want any of those roots down at the bottom to be exposed to air. So you don't want to have any air pockets. So again, years ago, you used to just, you know, stomp on it with your big boots on it, but we know we're busting up some of those roots doing that. So it's in, it's happy. We're going to leave it staked to that bamboo for part of this season. That bamboo was put in the nursery to just help the tree get up straight and tall. And then we'll slowly cut one of those ties every once in a while, and then the tree will stiffen itself up and find its own straight path. And you know, they'll grow a little crooked. It's not going to hurt it.
And you're watering it how much and how often again? Like
with this soil right here, it's really sort of a sandy fill sort of mix in here. This tree, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to water it every couple of days because it's going to be really dry. You know, if it rains, we don't have to.
and
After that,
gallon bucket? I mean, like doing.
yeah, at least a couple of gallons for something on this. This is, you know, we're watering a lot right now, but then I'd like to see this get, you know, a good drink, a couple of gallons of water, gallon and a half or so, half a bucket or whatever, every week.
Okay.
At least for this first season. What works great is, you know, everybody's got a leaky 5-gallon bucket or something like that. You just put it out and set it next to the tree. So you don't have to stand here and water. I want the water to go in slow and deep like this, and that's part of the idea of making that little berm, because that water will sit there and work its way down in the soil. So a lot of times if we do some plantings like this, if public works guys are filling it with a 2-inch garden hose, they're not going to stand here for half an hour and water this thing with a sprinkle. So you just drill a hole in a bucket and just set it there, and it'll drain itself out after 15 and 20 minutes. Makes it so you can't really use the bucket for anything else, but and they have little trash bags. They're pre-designed. They can get them. Looks like a little bagel. You can get ones that look like a little triangle. Gator bag makes them, and a whole bunch of different watering systems. But they're a plastic substance. You're buying more plastic, all those kind of things. But usually everybody's got a leaky bucket somewhere. So, any questions on this?
I have a question. So when you make this, is it just because it's on a slope, or do you do this?
I'm kind of do a couple things. I'm trying to hold in some water, allow some excess watering. We're going to water this in really heavy the first couple of days, because this tree, just came from a nursery, probably sat outside a couple of days, whatever else. So it's a little dry when we started, and then it's also going to keep the mowers and the weed whacker guys away. Big lawn like this, they're mowing all the time to keep down the fields. So this berm is going to keep that little bit of a distance, because they're not going to.
You would do this regardless of whether it was a slope or not.
Yep.
You always do that.
I'd like to make a little bit of a berm around them, put some rocks around the edge of that berm, catches the mower's attention.
You're not mowing.
Yeah.
It also keeps the weeds out for a little bit longer.
Yeah. And then in a situation like this, you'll see what we did. This one's been in for a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years. Beth and I were trying to figure that out.
Pre-COVID, so
Pre-COVID.
4 years maybe.
So then it's got a good, sort of donut or bagel of mulch all the way around it. 2, 3, 4 inches thick if you have to, but not up against a tree, not piled up like a pyramid. Tonight we're going to go through and prune those bottom suckers off because we don't want those as part of that tree. But the tree goes through a shock. It went from a nice happy environment, just got moved, shipped in a truck, moved here, so it goes through transplant shock. Even the little ones. The bigger the tree is, and some species have more transplant shock than others, they're just going to hunker down for a year or two. This tree is not going to grow a lot this year. But in a couple of years, it will slowly take off. Bigger trees like this, sometimes it can take 3 or 4 years for them to sort of adjust, get in their situation, and then so that those sprouts coming out of the bottom will cut those off.
And you first mulch around it when? Like how long?
I would like to wait a day or two because see that little pocket right there that we're making? That water's taking down all the muddy water. There was a little bit air pocket down there, so we'll throw a little bit more soil in that hole. It's not very cost effective to do it on a commercial basis like this and keep coming back to the client 2 or 3 times. So commercial guys, have to plant the tree and move on. So they're doing the best they can with this situation. With here, we can come back. Liz's office is right down the road. It's easy to sneak back over here and talk to it, and then get the the staff involved here or any of the kids groups or whatever else, just to come out and do it. So I'm going to wait at least a couple of days because this is prime example of what we're looking for. It's just taking the soil and sinking down. So we'll water this in at least a couple of heavy times like this. Okay. So if you're doing it at your own house, it's going to take you a couple of days to plant the tree, but you're going to increase that survivability and decrease the stress in that tree.
I have a question.
Sure.
With this kind of tree, how many times a week would you water it?
How many times a week is it going to rain?
0.
So if it's going to rain 0, then I might even water this little tree for the first few weeks a couple times. But during the summer, we're going to water it once a week. Maybe they do it every Friday or whenever they can. But try to get it on a schedule because it's going to need some help. And once it gets established, 1 or 2 years in the ground, Mother Nature will take care of that, and the trees will adjust to how much water they're getting. But we're just trying to give it that extra little bit of love to get this process started on this tree.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we want to try a bare root tree just to
We can, yeah.
show?
So everybody come check this out. We'll put a bare root tree in this spot right in here. So again, same type of soil, same mixer we get into. Toss a couple of rocks out. And I would still dig a hole that big, even for something this small. If you have compost, now's the time to mix it in. I want to use as much of the native soil that we got back out of here. This is all dirt, came out of the back of a dump truck. Soil Mother Nature made, takes centuries, decades, all that kind of stuff. So this is all fill that we're seeing in here. So you got to measure this out. So we're stretching out all these roots and all the spaghetti. So we could actually dig the hole a little bit. We could dig the hole a little bit longer in each one of these directions, keeping the seedling covered the best you can. Gonna stretch these roots right out towards you. And we're just making a little pile of soil underneath these roots. Getting about the right height. And this will be the time that you're going to water this in real heavy, make that mud pile, make a moat down around the bottom of it. Flood it right in. Yeah, I'll take all of it. Got a lot of water coming at you.
So you want to plant these where you want them to stay?
Ideally, yes. If you get them and you just can't get them in the ground, dig a little trench on the edge of the vegetable garden, put them right in there. It's too early to be putting out tomatoes and everything else anyway, so you get a little bit of space in the vegetable garden. If you need to, and you're planning a project and got a pool and whatever else is coming, all that kind of stuff, you can put them in a row, but you really got to make sure you get them back out of the ground. You can leave them in, you can plant a bunch of them in a row like this for a year or 2.
Okay, good.
But they're going to start getting bigger. The roots are going to start getting tangled together. Ideal situation for this, you're going to reduce the shock by not moving it that many times. These were all dug out with a machine. Looks like a big pitchfork behind the tractor, shakes all the dirt off. They put them in cold storage, so they're all packaged and ready to go in the springtime. So it'd be great if these got into their permanent location and stayed there. But I've got at least a few trees in the tomato bed. that didn't get out last spring, and so it's, they're still sitting there. And if you're growing your own Christmas trees, it's a great way to get small Christmas tree stock and do a 2-2 or a 3-2 type tree. So you can really get a jump ahead. So I'm growing some of my Christmas trees at the end of the tomato plantation, and they're going to be 3 years old in the nursery, 2 years in my planting bed. So there'll be a 5-year-old tree, and they'll be 2 or so feet tall. Too big for most nurseries to handle as bare rootstock, but easy enough to dig up and put on a blue tarp or put in a on a kid's sled or something like that and drag to the next location that you're bringing it to.
Do you recommend like root hormone, or is that
I
necessary?
wouldn't. Rooting hormones, that kind of stuff, are for cutoffs. So if you're doing a whip cutting and that kind of stuff, so you need to grow your own roots on it. As far as fertilizers and everything else, I wouldn't put anything on these trees for the first year. If you want to put anything on them, light dressing or compost on the top, so every time you water, that compost gets worked into the soil. You want to try to build that soil back up. Any of the fertilizer tablets and all that kind of stuff, most of them are either petroleum based or some chemical based, and it can be tough on these small roots for the first year or two. Questions?
So we planted 2 trees in like 20 minutes.
Sure, yeah. A little close together.
If you had some compost, would you put it in with the soil as you're mixing this?
Either put it back in the soil, no more than a 50-50 mix. So even if the soil had some debris in it and rocks and rubble, you take out the rocks and the bricks and that kind of stuff, but try to mix it back in, because a tree has to get used to that. Yeah. So we're actually going to top dress these with some compost. After all this water settles back in, we'll come back, sneak back over here, tomorrow or Friday or whenever the days we're coming and going, and we'll just top dress this whole thing with about 1 inch of compost. So then every time you're watering it, it's taking the nutrients of that compost, and slow release.
I have a question.
Yes.
What would happen if you planted a tree in a pot?
In the pot, you could put one of those little trees right in this pot, and you could grow it right out on your deck. But at some point, the tree is going to get big, so you got to have a sort of a backup plan already in place. So you can put the tree in the pot, put it on your deck. You're going to want to put it in the shade so this pot doesn't get really hot. It'll get really, really hot in the summertime. So a lot of times in nurseries, they'll have these down in a hole in the ground. So they'll put a big pot in the ground and put a small pot inside of it. Keeps them from falling over. It keeps them a little cooler, but they're watering them, every day, just to keep the temperatures down. And they go through a lot of moisture sitting out in the sun. So you could grow a tree right in a 5-gallon pail and carry it around with you.
Tree buddies.
Take it for walks.
Yeah, you can take it for walks, show it the town, and get around. But at some point, it's just going to fill up that space. So you got to move it on to the next space. A tree about this size, would sort of be max for a 5-gallon pail. Because at some point, those roots just got to start spreading out. Perfect. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.